Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I was thinking about Bill Cosby this morning. Believe it or not, I actually had a dream about Cosby last night, and it was a weird dream. I had a dream that I was like an adopted son or something of Cosby, which don't ask me. It's like the weirdest thing ever. But in the dream, I was giving Cosby and his family PR advice. I was basically telling them what I think they should do in response to the scandal, and how they should best manage the situation, which I don't understand where that came from. But maybe it was deep down, maybe I was analyzing, just the implications of all these rape allegations, what this means for Cosby's legacy, and, whether or not Cosby did it. And so, first, I'll just start by saying that, when you get accused by that many people, it's very difficult for anybody to believe that you didn't do something wrong. Um, you know, I do believe that there are some people in that pile whose stories are not legitimate. I believe that there's some people who jumped on the bandwagon to try to get money, after they saw the pile up. I believe that there's some people in there who may be making things up. But 25, 26 women, um, that's a huge number, and you can't just pretend like it's the same as one allegation. It's not. Even if 25 out of 26 women are lying, you're still a rapist, right? Um, Now, if you want me to, keep it 100 in terms of telling you exactly what I think, a couple of things come to mind. Number one, I'm very disappointed with Bill Cosby because Cosby, not only was he very self righteous over the years in terms of telling people what to do and wagging their finger and, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, but, you were a married man. I mean, he got married, I want to say, in the 1960s, maybe 1968, 69. And it always freaks me out when I see married men who have sex with more women than I had as a single man. And that's crazy to me. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, these guys are getting around. Like, what is so? So it basically tells me nobody has any respect for marriage. That's for sure. I don't say nobody, but a lot of people don't. Maybe a lot of people just do it because they feel like it's the right thing to do and they're supposed to do it, and God bless them for that. But I always had this perhaps naive belief that if you get married, you're supposed to be committed to your spouse at least a little bit. But beyond that, I mean, but I mean, if you want to be real, though, I do believe a lot of adultery occurs in marriages. A lot of these long-lasting marriages I've seen, are borderline dysfunctional in the sense that, you see people working very hard to make something that feels very unnatural to them work somehow. So you'll see couples that live together almost like brother and sister, where the wife will have a boyfriend, the husband will have a girlfriend, and they just do all these things to try to keep things stable, for the kids and, for perception and for their Christian community and stuff like that. And sometimes I feel bad for people who are in those situations. But, we choose the life that we choose, and it is what it is. But, excuse me. But with Cosby, I think it just concerned me, because there are at least several levels of deception that occurred with Cosby. Number one, not only are you lying to the public about, good values and good morals and good choices, but, not only are you cheating on your wife, which honestly I think we live in a society where people can be forgiven for infidelity. To be honest with you, once or twice over 50 years, I don't think most people are gonna kick your butt over that. But you're not only cheating on your wife, you're cheating. You're a serial cheater. Apparently, you got women running in and out like it's a freaking train station. Um, you're sleeping with women that are half your age, so you're 45, 50 years old, and you're sleeping with 18, 19, 20-year-old women, who are looking at you as a father figure, who are looking to you for mentorship and advice, even if it's voluntary, which I assume, I hope, that most of Cosby's extracurricular sex was voluntary. I hope he wasn't raping everybody. Even if it's voluntary, it's still a little bit shameful. I mean, just because the law says that a woman is old enough for you to sleep with her, that doesn't mean you're supposed to sleep with her. When I was at Syracuse University, I had a colleague that was sleeping with a student who was taking his class, and I just kind of said, man, I don't understand this because these young people, yeah, yeah, she's a grown up, she's a grown woman, God bless her, but their parents did not send their kids to the university to have them get screwed by their professors. And I didn't think that was cool, because I think an older man has a certain kind of strategic advantage, especially an older, powerful, wealthy man, and all this other stuff. And I think you have to be clear about what your intentions are, as opposed to letting this young person think you're there to mentor them when you're really trying to get in their pants. But that's what I warn my daughters, though. I tell them, look, whenever a man does a lot of nice things for you, just kind of keep one eye open, because there's a possibility that there is another agenda. It doesn't mean that it's definitely true, but we know men, and we know that sometimes the sex drive in men can be pretty strong. Even with perfect strangers, right? Women and men are both equally driven by sex, but in different ways. I don't necessarily see as many women engaging in that kind of very aggressive, predatory sexual behavior with perfect strangers as you might see with men. But sometimes women surprise you, so I'm not gonna write that off. But with Cosby, then the next level obviously is, so you got the fact that he was a cheater, a serial cheater, cheating with women who were young enough to be his daughter, maybe his granddaughter, and then you throw the rape allegation on top of that. Almost like icing on a really nasty, toxic cake. And I just think, I mean, if any of this is true, I mean, it's absolutely nothing short of dastardly. I think at the same time, I think you have to consider the fact that some of that there are varying degrees of trauma. Some people say, well, rape is always rape, no matter what, and that's true to a point if you draw a line. But if you really look at the various forms of trauma, not all are created equal. And what I mean by that is, I've seen cases of sexual assault where the person, the victim, male or female, says this was traumatic. I don't want to be near my abuser anymore. I don't want to be near this person. I'm going to press charges. I don't care if I never see you again. But in some of these cases with the Cosby thing, it's further confused by the fact that some of the women kept taking money from him. Some of them continued relationships with him. Some of them maybe went on to work with him. So it almost says to me that, it doesn't mean that the assault did not occur, but maybe it says, I'm not going to report the assault as long as you're hooking me up. When you stop hooking me up, or when when you boot me out of your circle, then I'm gonna go back and pick old bones and come at you for something that either you did that I didn't say anything about before, or something you did not do that I'm going to say that you did, right? And then I think the kicker obviously is there's no physical evidence. I mean, there's nothing that we have seen. I mean, nothing. Even Bill Clinton had a little semen stain on the dress where the girl kept the dress. I mean, there is really nothing. I mean, there was that stupid photo that Janice Dickinson had of Bill Cosby in a robe. That doesn't mean anything. There's nothing illegal about wearing a robe. So I think that's the problem with the Cosby thing. See, I was watching Larry Wilmore, and I like Larry Wilmore a lot. I love the fact that the Daily Show kind of put him in their succession of comedians who get to do this smart comedy, this political comedy, and I think his show was good. But here's the thing, though. Okay, so Larry Wilmore, and he was really funny. He said, I think the motherfucker did it, and he kept saying that, and I was thinking, yeah, I think the motherfucker did it too, but but the thing about it to me was, he then said, why isn't anyone listening to these women? Why isn't anyone listening to these women? And I think that's a little bit problematic, a little bit fundamentally untrue, actually. A lot of people are listening to these women. That's why they're on TV. That's why it's become a national story. That's why Bill Cosby has protesters at every show. There are people listening to these women, and really it's the majority of people. Most people do not see Bill Cosby in the same light that they saw him before the allegations. So the notion that no one's listening to these women, should be distinguished from the fact that maybe you're saying, why isn't everyone listening to these women, or why isn't everyone persuaded by these women? Not everybody's persuaded, we know that, but we have 360 million people, I think, in this country. So you're going to have some people who are going to hold out no matter what, who are going to always believe there's a conspiracy. No, there could be 1,000 allegations, and it is what it is. I mean, I can't explain it. It just happens. You have people that just believe things on blind faith, and they the evidence means nothing to them. But then again, we can't again get away from the idea that there really isn't much physical evidence here. There's just, you know, he say, she say, even though there's a lot of she says here, and that I think that becomes the problem. But but the other thing too is that the question that I would ask Larry Wilmore or Jay Leno or anybody else who agrees with Wilmore is, okay, so what do you want people to do? Like, what do you want to happen right now? Like, what is this? What is it? I mean, what do you want the public to do at this point? I mean, do we do a citizen's arrest and show up at Bill Cosby's house with pitchforks and beat his ass? I mean, do you want him to be arrested even though there's no physical evidence and these are crimes that were committed 30, 40, 50 years ago? I mean, in the 60s and the 70s? I mean, that's a long time ago. Most people that are talking about this were not even alive in the early 70s and the 60s. um do you want Bill Cosby to pay a bunch of money to the victims, $100 million or something like that, to pay for their pain and suffering? Well, maybe that's going to be settled in a civil trial. You got Gloria Allred, who's on the case. Again, somebody said they actually compared Allred to she's this famed attorney out in LA. They compared her to the female Al Sharpton, who kind of shows up, he was like an ambulance chaser in a way when it comes to women's issues. Sharpton is accused of being an ambulance chaser on black issues. Like, he had this emergency meeting with the Oscars when this emergency occurred where no black people were nominated or whatever for Academy Awards. That's not an emergency. That's just some Hollywood nonsense. There are real emergencies in the world, and that's not one of them. But at the same time, I think we need that advocacy. I mean, to some extent, there is advocacy that Sharpton does and that Allred does that needs to be done because these are groups that have traditionally been abused and taken advantage of and ignored. So I don't think every type of advocacy Sharpton does is necessarily bad, but I don't sign off on the idea of him being always good and always noble in his intentions, because I've seen up close just stuff that happened where I was behind closed doors and I said, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense to me. But once again, though, I've also seen things that he's done behind closed doors that I admire, that I thought were actually quite noble. So and I encourage you to think of life in that same way. Think of it in the sense of almost nothing's black and white. Almost no one is purely good and purely evil. Everybody is a shade of gray. Think about your own life. Sometimes you can be a good person. Sometimes you're a bad person. In the world, there are sometimes some cases where a bad person can do good things, or a good person can do bad things, and that circles me right back around to Bill Cosby. Do I know if Cosby is a good guy who did bad things, or a bad guy who did good things? I don't know, but I do know that this man, and I talked to a television guy yesterday about this, and he I think he saw what I was saying. Um, you know, I said, look, Cosby might have done some things in his personal life that nobody would be proud of, that he shouldn't be proud of, that he's probably regretting right now, but you cannot take away the fact that he created a show at NBC that he did not have to create, and that show was influential. It drove the culture. The same way hip hop, this crap on the radio, is driving our kids to want to be ratchet and ignorant and violent. Cosby created shows that made young black people want to be educated, made them want to build families. As the editor, Jamila something, I can't remember her last name. She's the digital editor at Ebony. She said, "I wanted to be Claire Huxtable because she grew up on the Cosby Show," and I thought that was just a perfectly sound and clear way to explain the fact that Cosby influenced a generation. There were millions of black kids who wanted to go to HBCUs because they watched a different world. You cannot deny that. You cannot take that away from him. And the fact that he cared enough to say, I want to create a show that's going to make black kids want to go to college. You got to give him credit for that. No matter what, give him credit for that. Stop acting like he didn't do this. That's what drives me insane, is that people want to destroy everything. They want to not just destroy Cosby, they want to destroy his fictional characters. They want to destroy Claire Huxtable. And it's just like, what the heck? What is your agenda here? Your agenda, this ain't got nothing to do with the allegations. This is something to do with you having a personal gripe with this idea of building and sustaining black families, of black people educating each other and making each other better. That's what your gripe is. Your gripe ain't just about the allegations. You're using the allegations as an excuse to go in and tear everything up. Almost like you know, almost like a father saying, son, you didn't do your homework, so I'm gonna beat you for 3 hours and burn your room up. I mean, sometimes one little trigger can really open the door to a whole set of grievances that we already had. And I think that that's the case with Cosby. And some of this he brought on himself. I think, again, Cosby has been so smug, so arrogant in so many different contexts that I know people personally who have had a gripe against this guy for a decade, who saw this as an opportunity to literally obliterate this dude. And again, you can't say it's not totally his fault because he thought he was untouchable. And he built one of these, what I call the perfect corporate Negro brand, where, you make yourself look so perfect, so wonderful. Tiger Woods made this dumb mistake too, and O.J. Simpson did that a little bit too. O.J., if you recall, O.J. at one point was everybody's favorite white man. Um, and so Tiger and Cosby in particular had these perfect brands where white America loved them so much and white America protected and insulated them. But then when it turns out that they did something to allegedly hurt a white woman, they mutilated these guys. They burned them to the ground. And so, um, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You live by the white man's money, you're gonna die by the white man's money. And that's what I really see. And again, this is not a racist thing against white people. I mean, white people have their money; they do what they're gonna do with it. But I always knew Cosby was vulnerable to the possibility that somebody would eventually decide that they were going to take him down. So I'll just end with that. I'll just say that I don't see Cosby in all black and white. He is various shades of gray. One other thing that we should mention that Cosby did, two other things that he did, among many that I think he deserves credit for. One, he created the show Fat Albert, and he literally had this as part of his dissertation look it up, at UMass Amherst, where he talked about the use of Fat Albert as a way to influence urban kids when it comes to education and good values and things like that. And I went back and analyzed some of the episodes of Fat Albert, and I said, man, I love what this guy was doing with this show because he influenced me with this. I remember seeing the lessons that Cosby would have at the end of the show, and as a little kid, I learned from that. I got a chance to be entertained in the morning on Saturday morning, but I wasn't being filled with the ratchet, irresponsible messages that we're seeing kids being inundated with today. The last thing that Cosby did that I think deserves mentioning, which is probably the biggest thing he ever did, was he gave $20 million to Spelman College. Spelman is a college for women. There are thousands and thousands of young women and older women who can look back and say, I would not have gone to college had it not been for Bill Cosby and Camille. Um, Now, does that mean that Cosby didn't do something else in the back end that wasn't appropriate? I don't know. But you can't take that away from him. And the fact is, you look at all these other celebrities out here, they got $100 million in their net worth, and they love to floss and brag and, buy private jets and spend their money on all these European brands that won't even hire black people. But they're not lining up to give $20 million to any HBCU. And in fact, all of Cosby's critics, everybody in the black feminist community, for example, who might, I'm not talking about all black feminists, I'm talking about the extreme individuals who want to destroy everything with a penis, when it comes to black men, complete emasculation. They're not giving $20 million to Spelman College. They're sisters at Spelman. What are you trying to do? To educate black children? What are you trying to do to support HBCUs? What are you trying to do to build your community? So I'm sorry, and again, I don't mean to isolate black feminists as an entire group. Actually, one of my kids is a feminist, and I support her in that. I support her strength and her womanhood, but I also remind her, don't forget about loving and supporting the black man in your quest to claim your strength and your independence, because sometimes we can work so hard to avoid our own oppression that we end up oppressing and abusing and bullying other people. And I'm just not a fan of that. So my belief is that, look, if you have an issue with Cosby's rape allegations and an issue with even with Cosby himself, that's fine. Just make your points clear, back them with logic, think them through, and be balanced in your assessment. And then but if you're trying to make this into some sort of political thing, or push your political agenda with this, I can't support that. So That's all I want to say about Bill Cosby. I didn't mean to talk longer than or as long as I did, but some thoughts just kind of came to mind as I was kind of going through this, and I can just say at the end of the day, did Cosby likely rape anybody? I think if I had to bet money, I would bet that he did. Does Cosby deserve to be held accountable for that? Yes, I do. I believe that. Um, is there any clear solution here in terms of how that accountability might occur? I don't know what that is. It would either be prison or money, or him paying a bunch of money. But I don't know if any one of those things are going to happen because you don't have any evidence, other than what people, other than testimony, which I guess that means something, but it's not physical evidence, right? And then at the same time, Cosby has done in his own way. He has tried to elevate his people in his own way. As awkward as it may have been, as arrogant as it may have been, the fact was that he was trying. And when I see someone trying to help the black community, um, most of the time I at least try to understand where they're coming from, even if I don't agree with them. And if you look back, if you go back, for example, go to YouTube and search the interview I did with Wendy Williams about Cosby, you can see even back then I was mad at Cosby for some of the stuff that he said. So if you want to know where I come from, that's what I am. I'm a teacher, and as a teacher, you don't love a student's work unconditionally. You evaluate everything they do and you say, okay, you did this really well, you screwed up on that. Nothing is 100% black or 100% white, and that's kind of how I analyze situations like this. But again, that's probably why I don't have that many friends, because a lot of people get all take stuff personally when I say stuff about them and get mad at me, and I think that's kind of silly. So anyway, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. So please take care. God bless. I'm gone. Peace.